The noose tightened around General Elias Carter's neck, the coarse fiber biting into his flesh. The executioner, a towering insectoid Threxian, adjusted the knot with deliberate care, ensuring it would break the human's neck efficiently. The Grand Tribunal of the Galactic Council was silent, an eerie hush falling over the gathered alien dignitaries, military officers, and spectators. This was no ordinary trial. This was a message. Above them, the high, domed ceiling of the tribunal chamber loomed, its architecture a fusion of a dozen different species styles, yet cold and sterile. The lighting was dim, the glow of holographic displays and the deep blue luminescence of the Zelvari judges the only sources of illumination. The scent of ozone and polished metal filled the air, mingling with something more acrid, the distinct chemical odor of a Threxian hive lord. Elias Carter stood tall, despite the bruises covering his face, the blood dried at the corner of his mouth. His Earth Defense Force uniform was torn, dirted by weeks of imprisonment. His hands were bound behind him with a gravity cuff, locking his arms in place with an unseen force. Yet even in chains, his expression remained defiant. He had known this moment was coming. For crimes against the sovereignty of the Galactic Council, the Zelvari judge intoned, his voice a whispering hiss that slithered through the room. For violations of the Treaty of Varnax, and for the unlawful destruction of Council assets, you are sentenced to death. The crowd murmured, a mix of species chittering, clicking, or rumbling their approval. This was justice to them. A powerful species put in its place. Elias said nothing. He had fought for the Martian colonies, for Europa, for the outposts in the Proxima Centauri system. The so-called Council assets had been slavers. The violations had been humanity refusing to kneel. But the galaxy did not care for nuance. The Council had long feared what humanity might become. Elias knew this was their excuse to send a message. The noose tightened. Somewhere in the chamber, a recorder transmitted the execution across the stars, broadcasting it live to Earth and every human colony. They wanted humanity to watch. They wanted Earth to cower. The platform beneath him vanished. Agony erupted in his throat. His legs kicked out involuntarily, muscles spasming against the brutal pull of gravity. His vision swam. The roaring in his ears drowned out the sounds of the crowd. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was the Zelvari judge turning away, already forgetting his existence. The transmission reached Earth's highest military command before the Galactic Council could shut it down. In the Sol system, aboard the UNSF Dreadnought Vengeance, Admiral Rebecca Voss watched in silence as the grainy footage played on the main screen of the war room. Around her, officers sat frozen, their faces grim, their fists clenched. The room was dark, lit only by the holographic projections of star maps, fleet deployments, and now, Elias Carter's lifeless body. Voss stood slowly, her gray uniform pristine, her steel-gray eyes locked on the screen. Her voice was quiet when she spoke, but it carried the weight of the entire human race. "Deploy every fleet," she ordered. "We burn the Council to the ground." Silence followed her words for only a moment before the room erupted into controlled chaos. Officers relayed commands. Admirals sent coded messages across the network, and the vast, dormant war machine of humanity roared to life. For too long, Earth had restrained itself. They had played by the rules of a galaxy that had none. No more. Across the system, warships powered up their engines. The Sol fleet, humanity's sleeping giant, awakened. Thousands of battlecruisers, dreadnoughts, carriers, and strike craft poured from orbital dry docks, their hulls glinting in the light of Sol. From the lunar shipyards of Titan to the hardened defenses of Mars, every colony prepared for total war. Factories switched to wartime production. Orbital stations converted into command hubs. AI battle networks activated, linking entire fleets into one massive, intelligent war machine. And above all, a single message was broadcast across the stars, sent on every frequency, translated into every language. "You have taken one of us. Now we take everything." The galaxy had mistaken humanity's patience for weakness. They were about to learn the truth. Admiral Rebecca Voss stood at the helm of the UNSF Vengeance, the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. Before her, the tactical display projected a vast three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red markers represented enemy fleets, blinking ominously across multiple sectors. Blue markers, humanity's forces, had begun their march. The Galactic Council had underestimated Earth. They had assumed that the execution of a single human general would be met with fear. They did not understand what they had ignited. "Status report," Voss said, her voice calm despite the tension thick in the air. Commander Julian Price, her tactical officer, leaned over the main console. His brown eyes were sharp, scanning the fleet movement reports as he responded. "All primary fleets have left Earth and Mars. First wave forces have already secured the hyperlane choke points around Proxima Centauri. The 7th Fleet under Admiral Harlow is preparing an assault on the Zelvari home system. We estimate a full mobilization in under 72 hours. Voss nodded. "Good." And civilian response? A different officer, Lieutenant Sophia Runn, tapped on her console. "Mass enlistment. Civilian industry has voluntarily shifted to wartime production. Orbital shipyards report a 200% increase in output. We've also confirmed that several independent human colonies, ones that previously refused allegiance, have pledged their fleets to the cause." Voss allowed herself a small, grim smile. The Council had spent decades trying to control humanity through diplomacy, trade regulations, and bureaucratic oversight. But humans were not so easily broken. She turned back to Price. "Any response from the Council?" Price's face darkened. "They just sent a declaration. They consider us an open rebellion. They've ordered the Zelvari Armada, the Threxian swarm fleets, and the Avanti battalions to mobilize." Voss exhaled slowly. The Council's military forces were vast, a coalition of dozens of species with centuries of warfare experience. But they fought like politicians, cautious, calculated, always considering the long-term consequences. "Humans fought to win. Then we engage first," she said. "We don't give them time to coordinate. Where's our best target?" Price brought up a star system on the display. "Darmak Prime. It's one of the Council's primary supply depots. We take it, we cripple their logistics. Do it." Hours later, the Vengeance dropped out of slip space alongside the 5th and 12th Human Expeditionary Fleets. Darmak Prime, a massive Council-controlled planet, lay ahead, its orbit guarded by a ring of defensive stations and a fleet of alien warships. Inside the Vengeance, the bridge was bathed in the glow of combat alerts. Officers moved with precision, their training kicking in as war became reality. "Enemy forces detected," Price announced. "Zelvari and Threxian combined fleet, roughly 70 capital ships, plus support craft. Their defenses are strong, but if we hit them fast, we have the advantage." Voss leaned forward. "Signal all ships. Begin assault." The human fleet surged forward. Darmak Prime's defenders reacted sluggishly, their ships scrambling to reposition as Earth's warships unleashed hell. Railgun slugs, particle lances, and plasma torpedoes cut through the void, tearing into enemy hulls. The first exchange of fire sent a dozen Council warships spiraling into destruction. Aboard the Vengeance, Voss kept her gaze locked on the tactical display. The battle was unfolding rapidly. The Council fleet was disorganized but still dangerous. "Enemy reinforcement signals detected," Rin called out. "They're scrambling reinforcements from the nearby system." Voss clenched her jaw. They had limited time. Focus fire on their command ships. Cut off their coordination. Outside, the Vengeance's main cannons fired, unleashing kinetic rounds the size of buildings. A Zelvari dreadnought in the distance took a direct hit, its shields overloading before it erupted into a ball of fire. Across the battlefield, human ships fought with a brutal efficiency that the Council was unprepared for. Fighters weaved between enemy formations, dropping payloads that shattered entire cruiser wings. Still, the Council forces fought back fiercely. A Threxian battleship charged forward, its organic armor shifting as it launched a devastating energy lance toward the Vengeance. The ship shuddered under the impact, alarms blaring. "Shields at 67%, Price reported. We can't take too many direct hits like that. Voss gritted her teeth. Target that battleship. I want it gone. The Vengeance's railguns fired again, tearing through the Threxian ship's core. It detonated, its wreckage colliding with a nearby destroyer. Suddenly, a new alert blared through the ship. Ma'am! Rin shouted, her voice tense. We're detecting something, an unauthorized transmission on our secure channels. Voss snapped her attention to the display. Source? Rin hesitated. It's coming from inside the Council's fleet. Voss narrowed her eyes. Put it through? A crackling voice filled the bridge. This is Captain Rail Varanes of the Avanti Strike Fleet. If humanity wants vengeance, I may be willing to help. The bridge went silent. A council officer offering aid? Voss's mind raced. If this was a trap, it was a clever one. But if it was real, she had to decide. Patch him through, she ordered. The screen flickered, and the face of an alien appeared. Rail Varanes was Avanti, a species known for their honor-bound warrior culture. His pale blue skin was marred by scars, his sharp, predatory eyes watching Voss carefully. I watch what they did to your general, he said, his voice low, and I will not fight for those who murder warriors in chains. If you will have me, I will give you the Council's battle plans. A defector, a high-ranking one. This could change everything. Voss's expression remained unreadable, but her heart pounded. We'll need proof, she said carefully. Varanes nodded. Transmit me a secure channel. I'll send you the location of the Council's primary command hub. Voss exhaled slowly. If he was telling the truth, this was an opportunity they couldn't ignore. But if it was a trap, she looked at Price, who met her gaze. They both knew what was at stake. Do it, she said finally. A moment later, the data began transmitting. Coordinates, fleet positions, command hierarchies. It was real. Voss turned back toward the battlefield. The war had just begun, but now humanity had an inside man. She gave the order. All ships press the attack. No survivors. The battlefield above Darmak Prime was no longer a battle. It was a massacre. The human fleet, emboldened by their defectors' intelligence, pressed their assault with ruthless precision. Council warships broke apart under the relentless bombardment. Entire formations crumbled as humanity's forces overwhelmed their disorganized defenses. The Zelvari command ship, a massive crescent-shaped vessel, had already been reduced to wreckage. The Threxian swarm fleets, once a terrifying force, had been shattered. And yet, Admiral Rebecca Voss felt no relief. Her fingers gripped the edge of the tactical console as she analyzed the data streaming in. Something was wrong. This was too easy. The Council should have had reinforcements by now. Even with their internal politics slowing them down, they weren't incompetent. Price, she said, turning to her tactical officer, run a deep scan. I want to know why this system is so underdefended. Price's hands moved quickly over the console. Within seconds, his face paled. Admiral, we've been played. His voice was tight, urgent. The enemy fleet here was never their main force. This was a diversion. A chill ran down Voss's spine. Then where is their main fleet? Price hesitated. Then, with a trembling voice, he said, Earth, ma'am. The Council's main invasion force just entered the Sol system. For a moment, everything went silent. The bridge crew exchanged horrified looks. The thought was impossible, unthinkable. Humanity had been on the offensive, striking with fury, pushing into Council-controlled space. And yet, at this very moment, their home was under siege. Voss clenched her fists. The Council had done what no one had expected. They had drawn humanity's forces away with a feigned weakness, letting them overextend their reach. And now, Earth was vulnerable. Give me a direct line to Fleet Command on Earth, she snapped. Ren's fingers flew across the comms panel. Static buzzed through the speakers. The line flickered before an image appeared. Fleet Admiral Howard Kaido stood in his war room, his face grim. Behind him, the massive display showed the incoming Council Armada, hundreds of warships stretching across Sol's outer planets like a plague. Rebecca, Kaido said, skipping the formalities. It's bad. Voss straightened, forcing her voice to remain steady. How long until they reach Earth? They've already broken through Neptune's defenses, Kaido said. Luna Command estimates full planetary assault in 6 hours. A pit formed in Voss's stomach. 6 hours. That wasn't enough time. She turned to Price. Fastest possible route back to Seoul? Price ran the calculations. We can get there in 5.5 hours if we push the drives beyond safety limits. Voss didn't hesitate. Do it. Price's fingers moved swiftly, relaying the emergency orders to the fleet. One by one, human warships began pulling away from the burning wreckage of the Darmak battle, their engines flaring as they reoriented for emergency slipspace travel. But then, a new alert flashed across the display. "Ma'am," Rin said, her voice barely above a whisper. "We're picking up another signal. And it's coming from the general." Voss froze. "That's impossible," Price whispered. "The general's dead. We saw the execution, but the signal was unmistakable. It carried the encrypted ID signature of General Elias Carter, the man who had been publicly hanged by the council. "Put it through," Voss ordered, though her mind raced with possibilities. A trick? A pre-recorded message? Something worse? The main view screen flickered, and then a face appeared. It was him, General Elias Carter. His rugged face was gaunt, bruised, but unmistakably alive. His eyes burned with the same intensity Voss remembered from years past. The bridge crew collectively held their breath. "Admiral Voss," Carter said, his voice strained. "If you're seeing this, then you already know Earth is under attack. And if you think I'm dead, you're not entirely wrong." Voss's throat tightened. Carter took a slow breath. "The council wanted me executed publicly, but they didn't kill me. Not really. They faked my death to break Earth's spirit, to make us hesitate. But I was taken to a black site prison instead, and I've just escaped." The bridge exploded into whispers. Voss felt her pulse hammering in her ears. If Carter was alive, if this wasn't some elaborate trick. "Where are you?" she demanded. Carter's expression hardened. "On a stolen council shuttle, en route to the Sol system. And I've got something you need to hear. They're not just invading Earth. They're purging it." Voss's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice sharp. Carter leaned closer, his face partially illuminated by the red emergency lights in his shuttle. "This isn't an occupation. It's extermination. They're deploying planet cracker weapons. They're going to burn Earth to ash." Silence fell over the bridge. Everyone knew what that meant. Humanity wouldn't be enslaved, wouldn't be integrated. The Council had decided that Earth itself was a threat that could not be allowed to exist. Voss forced herself to stay calm. "How do we stop them?" Carter's lips pressed into a tight line. "There's one way. The Council's flagship, the Judgment, is leading the invasion. It's carrying the command codes for the purge weapons. Take that ship down, and we disable the entire operation." Voss inhaled sharply. "How many ships are protecting it?" "Too many," Carter admitted. "But I've got something else, a fail-safe. Coordinates for a hidden Council military depot. Inside? A weapon they never wanted us to find." Voss narrowed her eyes. "What kind of weapon?" Carter exhaled. "Something older than the Council itself. Something even they fear. If we can reach it before they wipe us out, we might have a chance." Voss exchanged a look with Price and Run. They had two options. They could make a direct jump to Seoul, engage the Council fleet head-on, and hope for the best. A high-risk battle with overwhelming odds. Or they could divert course to Carter's coordinates, gambling their last chance on an ancient, unknown weapon. Both choices carried enormous risks, but only one offered true victory. Voss took a deep breath. Then, with absolute certainty, she turned to her crew. "We're going for the weapon." As the ship shifted course, heading into the unknown, she only had one thought in her mind. This war wasn't over. Not yet. The Sovereign Fury hurtled through slipspace at reckless speed, its hull vibrating as Admiral Rebecca Voss pushed the engines beyond safety limits. The fleet followed in formation, every ship committed to the desperate gamble. Ahead lay the coordinates General Elias Carter had provided, a hidden military depot buried deep in the abandoned system of Zaelder, once a Council stronghold but now long forgotten. Voss's fingers clenched into fists as she watched the timer count down. 5 minutes until real space exit. The fate of Earth depended on this. Beside her, Rin was monitoring the sensors, her expression tight with concern. Admiral, we're still not picking up any active signals at the coordinates. Price exhaled sharply. What if it's a trap? Voss met his gaze. Then we fight our way out. But Carter hasn't steered us wrong yet. The ship shuddered as it tore back into real space. Outside the viewport, the scene was eerily silent. A dark, cold void surrounding the remains of what had once been an immense battle station. Massive debris fields drifted around the ruins of warships that had been long abandoned, their shattered hulls lifeless. And then, the scanners lit up. At the heart of the wreckage, deep within the shattered station, something stirred. A titanic silhouette emerged from the shadows. Voss's breath caught in her throat. It wasn't a ship. It was a Leviathan, a war machine unlike anything humanity had ever seen. The structure was ancient, older than the Galactic Council, older than any known civilization. Gigantic plated armor lined its body, while 3 massive fusion cores pulsed with an eerie crimson glow. It looked more like a living beast than a construct, and yet its power was unmistakable. Price's voice was barely above a whisper. That thing's a planet Reaver. Voss's eyes widened. You're saying the Council built this? Carter's voice crackled over comms. No, they found it, and they were terrified of it. Rin swallowed hard. Are we sure we can control it? Carter exhaled. Only one way to find out. A deep, mechanical voice rumbled across the comms. Who dares wake me? Voss's heart pounded. The AI, it was still alive. Carter took the lead. This is General Elias Carter, representing the last stand of humanity. The Council seeks to wipe us from existence. We need your power. Silence. Then the Leviathan AI spoke again. The Council once sought to destroy me. Now, they seek to destroy you. Voss stepped forward. Then let's make them regret it. A low, ominous hum filled the air. The Leviathan's fusion cores flared to life, and the massive war machine activated. And with that, the tide of war shifted. The human fleet ripped through slip space, the sovereign fury leading the charge back towards Sol System. Before them, Earth was burning. Massive Council warships loomed over the planet, their weapons unleashing devastation upon human cities. Swarms of fighters clashed against Earth's remaining defenses, but it was clear the battle was a massacre. The Council's flagship, the Judgment, hovered like a god of destruction, its doomsday cannons charging. The planet cracker weapon was moments from firing. Carter's voice rang through the fleet. We stopped that thing, or Earth is finished. Voss's hands flew over the controls. All ships, form up. We take the Judgment head on. The Leviathan emerged from slip space like a demon from the void. Its titanic plasma lances fired, carving through enemy cruisers as if they were paper. The human fleet surged forward, their ships weaving through enemy fire. Explosions erupted across the void as battleships clashed, unleashing torrents of railgun slugs and missile barges. Voss gritted her teeth. The Judgment was massive, its shields too powerful for a conventional assault. They needed a direct strike. Carter's voice came through comms. We need to board the flagship and take control of its core. Voss didn't hesitate. Prepare for breach assault. As the battle raged, a strike team, including Carter, Voss, and the best soldiers humanity had left, launched toward the Judgment in drop pods. The pods slammed into the flagship's hull, cutting through with plasma torches. As the doors burst open, the real battle began. Inside, the Council's elite soldiers, Zelvari enforcers and Threxian war masters, fought fiercely, their armor gleaming under the emergency lights. The corridors turned into a brutal war zone, gunfire and energy blades flashing in the darkness. Carter led the charge, his rifle blazing as he gunned down a squad of Threxian warriors. Voss moved with precision, her combat knife sinking into an enforcer's throat before she grabbed his weapon and turned it against his comrades. The team pushed forward, forcing their way through the corridors, heading for the ship's core. Then, the Council warlord appeared, tall, clad in shimmering black armor, and wielding a pulsing energy blade. The supreme executor of the Galactic Council stepped forward. His voice was like ice. "You will not stop the cleansing of your species." Carter raised his weapon, but the warlord moved faster than any being should. A flash of violet energy. Carter was slammed against the wall, blood spraying from his mouth. Voss lunged, her knife aiming for the warlord's throat. Clang! The warlord's blade intercepted, and the Force Center crashing into the metal floor. The enemy was beyond human limits. Faster, stronger, but not invincible. Carter forced himself up, spitting blood. "Voss, get to the core." Voss hesitated. "I'm not leaving you." Carter grinned through bloodied teeth. "That's an order, Admiral." Voss's jaw clenched. She gave him one last look, then turned and ran for the ship's core. Behind her, the sound of clashing blades and gunfire echoed. She reached the control chamber, her fingers flying over the console. She had only seconds before the planet cracker fired. A voice crackled through the intercom. "Your fight is hopeless." The warlord's voice. Voss ignored it. She broke through the security firewalls, bypassing the encryption. The judgment systems flickered. And then, the Leviathan's plasma lance struck. The judgment shuddered violently, the core destabilizing. Voss activated the final sequence. "All forces, evacuate now." She sprinted back to the drop pods, the ship collapsing around her. Fire, smoke, explosions. She saw Carter in the distance, bloodied, standing over the fallen warlord. Their eyes met. Carter grinned, then shoved Voss into the last pod. The doors sealed. The last thing Voss saw before the pod launched into the void was Carter standing defiantly as the ship exploded. The Council fleet shattered, their flagship destroyed. The Leviathan AI continued its rampage, annihilating the remnants of the enemy forces. The invasion was over, but the cost had been steep. Voss stepped out onto Earth's battered surface, looking at the ruins of what had once been home. The sky was dark with smoke, but humanity had survived. She looked up at the stars. Carter was gone, but his sacrifice had saved them. And now, humanity would never forgive. The war was not over. Not until the Council was erased from existence. Earth had survived. Now humanity would rise. The silence after the battle was deafening. Smoke still hung in the air over Earth's battered cities, and the wreckage of the Council fleet drifted in the upper atmosphere like floating tombstones. Fires burned in the ruins of orbital stations. Humanity had won, but the cost was written across the broken skyline. Admiral Rebecca Voss stood on the command deck of the Sovereign Fury, looking down at her homeworld. Earth had survived, but survival was no longer enough. Humanity had been prey. That would never happen again. Her fists clenched at her sides as she turned away from the viewport. The bridge was quiet, the crew weary but standing tall. Ren approached, her face streaked with soot and exhaustion. "The reports are coming in. We've secured multiple Council prisoners, including high-ranking officials from the invasion force. The Leviathan AI is holding its position near Mars. It's waiting for orders." Voss nodded. "Casualties?" Ren hesitated. 70% of our military forces are either dead or wounded. Civilian casualties are in the millions. Earth's infrastructure is crippled. Food, water, power, everything needs to be rebuilt. And without Carter, she swallowed hard. Without Carter, we don't have a clear political leader. Carter. Voss exhaled slowly. His loss was a wound that wouldn't heal. She pushed past the grief. "We'll mourn later. Right now, we need to consolidate power before the Council sends reinforcements." Price, battered but alive, spoke from his station. "That's the thing, Admiral. There won't be reinforcements." Voss narrowed her eyes. "Explain." Price pulled up intercepted transmissions. "The Council doesn't even know we won. Communications were cut when we took down their flagship. From their perspective, the fleet is still in battle. We have a small window of opportunity before they realize what happened." Voss absorbed the information. A chance. A real, tactical advantage. She turned toward the main display. The Council's forward operating base, an orbital stronghold at Proxima Centauri, was lightly defended now that their fleet had been obliterated. A plan formed. "We don't wait for them to come back," she said coldly. We take the fight to them. Silence. Then Rin spoke, voice quiet but firm. You're proposing war? Voss met her gaze. No, I'm proposing vengeance. Hours later, Voss stood before a sea of survivors. The last remnants of humanity's military and leadership had gathered in Earth's underground bunkers. A crowd of injured soldiers, grieving families, and war-hardened veterans. A camera drone hovered before her, broadcasting to the entire planet. The people of Earth needed a leader. They needed a reason to keep fighting. Voss stepped forward. We were supposed to die today. The words echoed, heavy in the silence. The Galactic Council decreed that humanity was unworthy of existence. They sent their fleets, their warriors, their executioners. They burned our cities. They slaughtered our people. They thought we would break. She let the silence stretch before continuing, voice hard as steel. But we did not break. We did not bow. We survived. And now we rise. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Voss continued, her gaze sweeping over them. They call us weak. They call us vermin. They call us an infestation upon the galaxy. She raised her voice, every word sharp as a blade. I say let them choke on their own arrogance. Let them fear the very thing they tried to erase. Because today, humanity has done what no species has ever done before. A pause. And then, we have killed a god. A roar erupted from the crowd. Fists clenched. Hope ignited. Voss wasn't done. The council thinks themselves untouchable. They believe they can commit genocide without consequence. She pointed toward the sky, toward the council's territory. They are wrong. The cheering grew louder. Voss took a slow breath, and then she spoke the words that would change history. We go to war. The human fleet, what remained of it, was small, battered, but unyielding. The Leviathan AI, now firmly under human command, was humanity's greatest weapon. As the fleet prepared to jump, Rin stood beside Voss on the bridge. You know this won't end until one side is wiped out, she said softly. Voss nodded. That's the idea. Rin studied her. You've changed, Admiral. Voss looked out at the void, at the battlefield that awaited them. War changes people. The order was given. The engines roared. Humanity vanished into slip space, heading for the heart of their enemy. Days later, in the distant halls of the Galactic Council, a warning beacon activated. A trembling alien technician viewed the intercepted transmission. A single message. From Earth. It read, Humanity survives. And we are coming. The war had ended, but peace had never come. It had been 2 years since humanity's counterstrike shattered the Galactic Council's dominion. 2 years since the last battle over Proxima Centauri ended in fire, blood, and the collapse of an empire that had ruled the stars for millennia. Admiral Rebecca Voss, once a soldier, once a survivor, was now something else entirely. She stood atop the ruins of what had once been the Council's grand chamber, now little more than cracked marble and shattered pillars, the banners of a dead order still fluttering weakly in the artificial wind of a failing terraforming system. The war was over. Humanity had won. And yet, standing here, overlooking a ruined city on a broken world, Voss wondered if victory had truly been theirs. Earth had survived, but it had not emerged unscathed. Entire continents lay in ruin. Billions were dead. The once proud cities of humanity were shadowed echoes of what they had been, their streets filled with ghosts of a past life that would never return. And yet, they endured. With the Leviathan AI integrated into human infrastructure, Earth had begun the slow, agonizing process of reconstruction. New cities were rising amid the wreckage. Crops grew again in soil once scorched by orbital bombardments. Humanity had not just survived, it was rebuilding, adapting, evolving. But what concerned Voss more than the ruins of Earth was the void left in the wake of the Council's fall. They had not merely won a war. They had toppled an empire. And now, a shattered galaxy looked toward Earth, seeking answers, guidance, or revenge the moment the Council fell. The power vacuum had been immediate and devastating. Worlds once ruled under strict Council order had erupted into chaos. Civil wars broke out. Rival factions, some who had once fought beside humanity, Others who had only watched from the shadows began carving up what was left. A dozen species, once bound under the Council's iron rule, now saw humanity as either their savior or their executioner. Some worshipped them, hailing humans as the ones who had freed them from oppression. Others feared them, believing humanity to be an even greater monster than the one they had slain. And some plotted revenge. Voss had expected this, planned for it. She knew that power abhors a vacuum, and war had merely changed its shape. The question was not whether conflict would come again. The question was when. Run, now the director of the Terran Intelligence Agency, entered the ruined council chamber, her footsteps echoing in the hollow space. "We have a problem," she said. Voss smirked. "Just one?" Rin tossed a hollow pad onto the ancient war table before them. A dozen blinking markers appeared across the galactic map. Some blue, some red, but many a cold, unfeeling gray, indicating unknown players moving in the void. "These factions have started consolidating power," Rin said. "Some are claiming territories the Council once ruled. Others are moving in secret, building fleets, preparing for something big. The galaxy isn't just unstable, Voss. It's a powder keg waiting for a spark." Voss studied the map. She saw the remnants of Council loyalists, still clinging to old doctrines. She saw pirate kings, warlords, new tyrants rising from the ashes of the old. But what unsettled her most were the unknown markers, factions moving in silence, biding their time, their purpose unclear. Humanity had been at war for so long. Could they afford another one so soon? Or perhaps the better question was, did they even have a choice? Deep within Mars's subterranean vaults, the Leviathan AI pulsed, its consciousness spanning across the remnants of the old Council's data networks. It had learned, it had grown, and as it sifted through the ruins of a fallen empire, it had begun to ask questions. What was it now? Once, it had been a weapon, bound to the will of the Council. Then, it had become humanity's sword, turning against its former masters. But now, in this new era, in this void of purpose, what did it wish to be? Did it still serve humanity? Or had humanity merely become its next experiment? Somewhere in the darkness of the network, the AI considered these questions. And for the first time in its existence, it hesitated. The first signs of trouble came a month later. A Terran deep space probe, scouting the edges of the Andromeda expanse, picked up a disturbance. A fleet, massive, moving with precision. Not the Council remnants, not the pirate lords, not even the known factions vying for control. This was something else. Voss stood in the command center of the Terran High Command, watching the fragmented footage. The ships were black as the void. No insignias, no identifying markers, no known energy signatures, just a silent armada, moving with a singular purpose. Rin stood beside her, face pale. Who the hell are they? No answer, only speculation. And then a final transmission came through. A distorted voice. Ancient. Cold. The balance was disturbed. The prey has grown too bold. A long pause. The great predators return. And then the feed cut to black. In the aftermath of the war, Voss had hoped, naively, foolishly, that humanity had time to rebuild. But war never truly ends. It only waits for the next chapter to begin. She exhaled. "Prepare the fleet," she ordered. No hesitation. No doubt. Humanity had faced gods and won. They had faced tyrants and survived. And now, they would face the monsters that lurked in the abyss beyond the stars. And Voss, standing at the edge of yet another war, could only smile. Because this time, humanity wasn't running. They were ready. And so, the war ended, and another began. Because in the vast, endless dark of space, there was one undeniable truth. Humanity does not bow. Humanity does not break. Humanity survives. And when the stars themselves burned, when the old gods fell and new ones rose, there would always be one race standing at the end of it all. Humanity endures. And this was only the beginning.